Good evening.
Good evening, yeah. So thank you for joining KML Libraries Books and Beyond event. My name is Pinki Shah and I'll be your host tonight. I would like to remind everyone to please mute themselves at this time. And we'll have an interactive question answer session towards the end. At that time, feel free to raise your hand and ask a question or type it in a chat and we'll gladly ask it for you. Just as a reminder, we'll be recording this tonight's event. After the discussion, we'll be raffling off 2 signed copies of the book, so please stick around. One of the reasons I picked The Mountains Sing for this event is that it was highly recommended by all the readers and everywhere I saw, and it couldn't have been a better fit for our library's monthly reading challenge theme of historical fiction. So now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Nguyễn Phan Quế. She's an award-winning writer in both Vietnamese and English. Her books of poetry, short fiction, and nonfiction have received the 2010 Poetry of the Year Award from the Hanoi Writers Association, the Capital's Literature and Arts Award, and won first prize in the poetry competition celebrating 1,000 years of Hanoi. Her debut novel and first book in English, The Mountains Sing, is an international bestseller, a New York Times Editor's Choice selection, winner of the 2020 Book Browse Best Debut Award, and winner of 2020 Non-Literary Award Fellowship. The novel has been named Best Book of 2020 by many media establishments, including NPR, the Washington Independent Review of Books. Quế Mai has a PhD in creative writing from the UK's Lancaster University. She currently divides her time between Indonesia and Vietnam. She has just been named by Forbes Vietnam as one of 20 inspiring women of 2021. I would now like to welcome Quế Mai to our program. Hi, Quế Mai.
Hi, Pinki. Thank you so much for your introduction. Hello, everyone. I made myself a cup of tea because I am having tea with you. Pinki sent me some questions, but I did not prepare. I just want to go with myself, with my heart. I'm going to share with you everything I know today and all my thoughts, honest thoughts and feelings about the book, about Vietnam. So feel free to ask me questions afterwards. When I was a child, I always wanted to be a writer. And my parents told me no, because the situation for writers in Vietnam is very difficult. And then we were really poor. So my 2 brothers were saying, why you want to be a writer? Study and get a good job and help parents so that we have enough food to eat. So I went on and studied business and worked for business in a while. Believe it or not, I was one of the first investors in the Vietnamese stock market. But now for 10 years, I didn't buy anything. The thing with writing is that, I love to dream instead of, and I become stressed when I think about finances. So anyway, so I'm here to talk about my novel, The Mountains Sing, and I'm so grateful that the Kent Memorial Library is hosting my conversation today. Thank you to everyone who has, organized, who have helped to organize this event. So I would like to have you a taste of this book by reading, just 2 paragraphs. About this paragraph is about a village called Vĩnh Phúc, but actually it comes from my experiences growing up in a small village in the north of Vietnam. So, this is my, so let us go there. To go there, you and I will need to travel 300 kilometers from Hanoi. We follow the national highway, passing Nam Định, Ninh Bình, and Thanh Hóa provinces. Then we turn left at a pagoda called Phú Định, crossing several communes before arriving at Vĩnh Phúc, a village in the north of Vietnam. The name of this village is special as it means forever blessed. At Vĩnh Phúc, anyone will gladly show you to the gate of our ancestors' home, the Chan's family's house. They walk with you along the village road, passing a pagoda with the ends of its roof curving like the fingers of a splendid dancer, passing ponds where children and buffaloes splash around. During summer, you will gasp at clouds of purple flowers blooming on swan trees and at red gout flowers sailing through the air like burning boats. During the rice harvest season, the village road will spread its golden carpet of straw to welcome you. So, you know, I spent the first 6 years of my life in this small village in the north of Vietnam. And even though it was very poor and damaged, you know, and devastated during the war, it was very beautiful in my child's eye. You know, there were a lot of, you know, flowers. The people were really working really hard. And I have memories from my childhood that I brought into the mountain sing. So the mountain sing is my journey to, actually I was born, when I was born, both of my grandmothers had died. So I always dreamed about having a grandmother who told me stories about our home village. So, you know, I created Grandma Diệu Lan, and I did my research for so many years to be able to write this book. And I wrote this book as part of my master's and PhD in creative writing. And I wanted to present Vietnam more than a war, even though, you know, like the book was set during the Vietnam War, but it goes back in time and it goes forward. So you will get a glimpse of Vietnam's 20th century history via the lives of 4 generations of this Vietnamese family. And I wanted to highlight, you know, the trauma and the inherited trauma experienced by Vietnamese people because of the impact of different historical events. And because, you know, rarely stories about the Vietnam War have been written from the Vietnamese women point of view. So I wanted to document that. I wanted to give space, you know, to women voices when it comes to Vietnam War fiction. You know, I wrote this book with the Vietnamese English dictionary because I only had a chance to learn English in my 8th grade. Growing up in Vietnam, you know, like my schools did not have English teachers. So I was really lucky when I was in 8th grade. One English teacher, Mr. Chan, Nguyễn Phan Quế, he came to my hometown. Which, you know, I lived in the rural area, and we didn't have access to libraries. I mean, I did not have access to a library growing up, you know, so I am always in love with libraries nowadays if I can visit one. But also we, in my hometown, we didn't have access to a lot of educational resources, and many teachers did not want to stay there because it was really poor, you know. Very many good teachers left our place to go to bigger cities, you know, in search of better opportunities. So I was really lucky that my teacher, after his graduation from university, he went to our hometown. He taught as a volunteer for street children. And at that time I was a street seller, and because he offered free classes, I could attend the free English lessons with him. And that's how I started to learn English in my 8th grade. So, but we learned a lot through reading and writing. I didn't know how to speak. So I really practiced speaking years later when I got a scholarship to study in Australia. And when I went there, nobody understood anything I said because I didn't know how to pronounce it. And at that time, you know, I didn't know there was no internet. I didn't know how to use a computer, of course. And you know, learning English at that time was really challenging. So yeah, so it's incredible that I'm here, and you know that you are reading my book, The Mountain Sings. So it's a great honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Quế Mai, for sharing a little bit story behind, you know, your life story. You kind of, my initial question was, you know, so you kind of gave me the answer, but I'm still gonna, you know, first of all, I actually really want to thank you for sharing your side of the story and the struggle Vietnamese people have gone through. But what compelled you to write your story in English? And has the response to your book you received from readers in the United States particularly has been any different from other countries?
Oh, thank you, Pinki, for this great question. I think, you know, my relationship with English literature began when I started translate Vietnamese poetry into English, because I felt like I wanted the international reader to know about Vietnam beyond a war. So for years I was translating, you know, a lot of Vietnamese poetry into English and had them published in the United States. And you know, I even helped produce a radio program on Vietnamese poetry. And then I was looking for a novel to translate, because I felt like, you know, a lot of people love to read novels, right? And I wanted to you know, to translate a novel about Vietnam. And then, you know, I was looking for a while, and then one day I thought, why don't I write one myself? So, but I also had the idea of writing a book with a grandmother's figure in it, so that I could have a grandma. And, you know, throughout my life, I experienced how, you know, different historical events divided our country and our people. So I wanted to put Vietnamese people on the center stage of this story. So then when I had the idea to write in English, so I thought, okay, let me write that book. So, you know, so this is how it started in 2012. And I think another reason for writing in English is also to reclaim the narrative, you know, by Vietnamese women. Because if you watch Hollywood movies, or, you know, or there are a lot of books written by Westerners who use Vietnamese people as the background for the Western stories, you know, and who portray Vietnamese women as victims, as those who need to be rescued by men, as prostitutes who are absent of trauma, absent of agency. So I wanted to show the real Vietnamese women whom I met throughout my life, who influenced me, who had to bear, you know, the burden of different historical events, but who continue to be the pillar of you know, of our community and of our families. I mean, the response from the US has been incredible. I got so many emails, many messages from veterans themselves. You know, veterans who told me personal stories about their relationship with Vietnam. They sent me pictures of their time during the war and after the war, really, really personal stories. You know, the response from the Vietnamese American community has been incredible. Many people told me that their families went through similar experiences, you know. And I just posted on Instagram, you know, a story of a reader, Trinity Nguyen, who said that, you know, it felt like her own family story, because her grandma also walked, you know, for so long with her children from north to south of Vietnam during the war. And her name was also, her great grandma's name is also Chan, like Grandma Diệu Lan. So yeah, so, you know, I mean, the general public perception of the book has been beyond my expectation. I'm just so moved and am very thankful.
Okay, no, thank you. That's, I was always curious that because you have shared your side of story, which was, like you said, when you hear word Vietnam, the first thing Westerners in their head comes is Vietnam War. So to read a book from your side, it was incredible. So again, thank you so much for sharing your side. Another thing that popped in my head when I was reading the book was wars leave behind, visible, not so visible wounds on people. And as they say that a sorrow shared is a sorrow held. And you were able to share your story with millions of people across the world. And it is not forgetting that heals, it is remembering, which you did through your book. So do you think how was writing this book helped you heal? Or has it?
That's a complex and really great question, Pinki. I mean, it reminds me of the Vietnamese saying, chia buồn. When you are chia buồn is to share sorrow. So when there is, for example, if in Vietnam, if there's a funeral of someone, you go there and then you tell the people, cho chia buồn nhé, let me share your sorrow. Cho chia buồn nhé, let me share your sorrow. So so I think I shared my sorrow regarding the war and many terrible things that happened with readers throughout this book. And in that sense that my burden of sorrow is lessened. But at the same time, I also get to share my readers' sorrow too. I remember the other day, I had a book club where a book club with a group of Vietnamese Americans. And at the end of the book club, because everyone was really emotional, and I started asking them, how they were doing. So they started sharing with me their incredible experiences. One person told me that when she was growing up, she noticed that both of her grandparents had the same death day. So on the death day, according to the Vietnamese tradition, we make offering. Death day celebration is really important. We make food and we offer to those who died and pray for them to come home and eat the food we cook for them. So we always remember the death day of our loved ones. So she said that every year they celebrated or they honored her grandparents on the same day. So she asked her parents why both grandparents died on the same day. And then only when she was older, they told her they had died because of the land reform. Both of them had killed themselves during the land reform. People shared with me incredible stories during the book club. So my heart is really heavy. And I think in a way that I feel like, there's still so much trauma within our, community that is so difficult to heal. How can you heal when people are still suffering? How can you heal when so many people are still suffering from Agent Orange, from unexploded ordinances? I mean, when I talk to veterans, from the US, American veterans, so for example, I just wrote about Agent Orange on the New York Times, and then one veteran told me, I was sprayed by Agent Orange. He wrote me an email. I was sprayed by Agent Orange, and they start, sharing these personal stories. So I think healing is we still need a lot of, discussions like this to help bring people together and also to call for peace and more understanding. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of division, a lot of, resentment out there. And I would hope for more forgiveness and more healing and more reconciliation and more peace. I think as a human race, we have done so much destruction and damage on our earth. You know, so I don't know, because, you know, when one war ends, another one starts. The sad reality is that, you know, our politicians keep, you know, finding excuses to start wars. So so I have no answer to that question. I'm really sorry, but personally, I also looked for healing through my book, because my grandmother was killed in the land reform, in the Great Hunger. My father's mother was killed in the Great Hunger, and that's why I created Wicked Ghost in the Mountain Sing, because I wanted to, you know, take a lot of revenge on him. But in the end, I think I found forgiveness instead, because, you know, my mother used to say, if we bear grudges, we are the ones who have to bear the burden of sorrow. So that's why, you know, in the end of the book, I found forgiveness. So in that way, you know, I felt like this book is my search for peace, the search for healing. And it's a long process, but I think, but also very difficult, because when you write about trauma, you have to dig deep. You have to feel all the pain and all the emotions. So you know, in a way, writing is also the process of accepting the hurt, accepting the pain, so that you can feel, you know, you can have more empathy, you can have more compassion. So it's not an easy job at all. I mean, I cried so much writing this book, because everything felt so real, because, you know, there were so many personal stories that came into this novel. You know, the story of Grandma Diệu Lan, how she had to abandon one child after the next. You know, it's the real life experience of my friend's grandmother. That was the true story of what happened to her, you know, during the land reform. So, you know, to write was to relieve all of these experiences, and you know, to transfer it onto the page.
Yeah. No, and like you said, healing is a process. And hopefully you will keep writing and share your stories and sorrows with us, and we can help you in the process of healing. The land reform lends you to my next question. And again, this is another thing that we say, people closest to you hurt you the most. And what Vietnam had to endure during the land reform and the divide between North and South was catastrophic. And the stories that you shared in your book was really heartbreaking. Now, did Vietnam reunite or overcome such devastating times?
I think it's nowadays every family in Vietnam knows about the land reform, you know, or had some experience with it. But reconciliation and forgiveness is difficult, because we can't talk openly about the land reform and its impact yet. You know, it's still a forbidden topic. It's still a censored topic. Literature written about the land reform normally is not allowed to be published in Vietnam, or if it's published, a lot of it is censored. So people can't talk openly about it. And, you know, with healing, if you don't share, if you don't discuss, then it's difficult, you know, to, for healing to take place. I think there's still a lot of resentment, a lot of pain, and a lot of consequences that you know, that are still born, that are still carried on until today. You know, because of the land reform, for example, families were dispersed everywhere. You know, I mean, personally, I know many family members who had to run away, like the Chan family in the Mountain Sing. You know, and they haven't been united yet. You know, things are difficult, and there are still people missing from that period. And recently, I read a really great novel by Tạ Duy Anh called The Orphaned Land, Đất Mồ Côi. And he wrote about, the land reform head on. He, so vividly about the things that happened, because it came from his own family experiences and his interviews with other witnesses. And the novel was published, but no media could give any, report about it at all. No review on the media. And now it has been, censored. So there was a secret document that said, we have to, nobody is allowed to print or to sell this book anymore. So it's still a very sensitive period of our history.
Before I open up to everybody else, I just have one very important question, and you did kind of said a little bit about it, but like you said, you just published an essay in New York Times called "Don't Forget the Agent Orange Victims," and there was just recently a court case in France about one of the victims of Agent Orange. Can you please explain a little bit more about the effects, and do you have any stories that you came across or experiences?
I think it could be, I would love you to, if you haven't read the article, I would love to share with you later. But I used to volunteer in orphanages where children deformed by Agent Orange were kept, and they were highly disfigured. I met a mother who had to give up her son to the orphanage because she could not take care of him. Her husband had died because of cancer, because he fought in the areas, sprayed by Agent Orange. So she, she was really poor and was a laborer, doing different type of jobs, and he needed 24 hours care. So she had to give him up to this orphanage, and I volunteered there. And I remember one day I was leaving the orphanage, she pulled my hand and she was crying so much. So I asked her to sit down and I talked to her, and she told me, can you imagine, as a mother, I had to give up my child, and she went there during the weekend to bath him and to feed him, but nothing. She felt so bad towards her husband as well. And it's outrageous that that millions of people who are struggling with the impact of Agent Orange in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia have not received assistance. There are many people who live in mountainous areas who were badly affected, who have no access to medical help. And parents, there are many parents who have to take care of the kids themselves, and then who were telling, I have a friend who just wrote an article that these parents told him, what would happen to my child when I die? Because then the child would go to an orphanage. In Vietnam, there's so many orphanages like that. If you visit Vietnam, you will see these orphanages, and all of these children and generations of people are still suffering from the impact of Agent Orange. So, the court case of Mrs. Trần Tố Nga in France was really historical, because, the victims of Agent Orange from Vietnam have started suing chemical producers in the US, but the case was dismissed 3 times by US courts. So this French Vietnamese national, Mrs. Trần Tố Nga, she brought her case to French court, because under the French law she could bring, she could do that. And the court accepted her case 7 years ago. So since then she had been, she's nearly 80 years old, but she had to fight for many years, to gather all these documents. And now the court just 2 days ago, the court just said, it's not within our jurisdiction. And she was devastated, and I called her afterward, and she said, she felt like a knife was pierced to her heart, because like, why did they allow her to submit the case, and only to say that, you know, we can't give a decision because, you know, and of course her team is appealing, but you know, she's suffering from cancer. She's really, really sick, and but she had to fight this fight, not just for herself, but for millions of other victims. So it's devastating, and and you know, normally when we talk about wars, we talk about the number of soldiers who were killed on the battlefield, or of the citizens who died because of bombings, but we don't think about, you know, the impact on nature, you know, on its destruction of, you know, fabric of societies, how it destroy family relationships, you know, how it tear people apart. And the Vietnam War did exactly as that, you know, it tore Vietnam apart. It tore our community apart. And I know Vietnamese Americans who have refused to go back to Vietnam until current day, you know, because there's still a lot of strong emotions, and deep division within our community. So I hope, you know, there are a lot of material out there about Agent Orange, and I hope, I'm sure you're all familiar with it, and I hope you will support our fight for the justice for victims of Agent Orange, because there's still a lot to be done, and we haven't started, you know, because you know, I'm really upset at these chemical producers, you know, Monsanto, for example, Dow company, they all rich companies, they reap profits from the sale, distribution of Agent Orange, and they have not taken any step to help victims of Vietnam, or to take away the dioxin which is still deposited in our soil, and, you know, still in our lakes and rivers. You know, if it were not for legal reasons, then it would be for moral reasons, right? That they would, you know, voluntarily do something, you know, contribute to some environmental project. They have not done anything. So, so yeah, so it's frustrating.
Yeah, no, I did read the article you shared, and if anybody would like to, it was in New York Times. Quế Mai's article about Agent Orange was published. If anybody, it was an essay, and she talks about the effects and everything that Agent Orange has done, and people are suffering. If anybody wants it, I can always email it to you guys. And I always believe war is a fight where nobody wins. It's a devastation. War always brings devastation, and it's a sad thing. And still, like you said, there is a war after war. So yeah, my heart is with everybody. I do have a couple of questions in the chat, which I will read, and then I can open it up to the floor, and you just either raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask yourself. But let's, somebody's asking, when can we expect your next book?
Next book, I have finished writing it. So I'm really excited to share it with you soon. So this next book is also about the relationship between Vietnam and the US. So it's about Amerasians, children of American soldiers and Vietnamese women born and abandoned during the Vietnam War. So it took me already 6 years to write this book. And I worked as a journalist to and help some people to unite. So it was really emotional, and the real life stories of Amerasians were just unbelievable. So I wanted to document them into this book somehow. And yeah, I hope you see it published soon. And I want to take this opportunity to say hello to Judy Ross, who's like an amazing champion of my work from the very beginning. She has moderated a lot of book clubs with the Mountain Sing. So thank you, Judy, for being here.
Judy. I have another question by Pam. Was your book censored? And did the censorship have an influence on your writing?
Censorship, of course, has a big impact on my writing. That's why I wrote it in English. Because, you know, if I write in Vietnamese, the first thing that I thought of was like, oh, can this be published? And so because I know really well how censorship works. I think so far the response from Vietnam has been amazing. Readers who have read the book have told me that they could connect with a lot of experiences of their families. So I had moving book club discussions with readers from inside Vietnam. So yeah, and I wrote this book for peace and for my love for Vietnam. And I wrote it from the personal perspective of people who experience it, you know, from the human viewpoint. So I hope that people who read the book will, you know, like understand my message of peace and reconciliation. So with censorship, you never know. It's difficult to answer because there are no rule about how it works. It's very much about who's reading the book and what's their reaction. So so I don't know yet. I mean, you know, one of the books I really love is Vietnamese, The Sympathizer. That book was translated into Vietnamese 3 years ago, and it won the Pulitzer Prize. And it's been translated in so many languages, but it has not been able to be published in Vietnam yet because of censorship reasons. So it's difficult to say.
No, thank you. Now I'll open the floor for everybody. So please either raise your hands or I can unmute you, or if you want to type a question in the chat and I can ask it for you.